So you go ahead, Sophie.
Hi, this is me. I'll skip past that one. I'm a content marketing specialist. I've been working in the industry for about 8 years or so. I've worked in various different industries, from kind of insurance through to theatre, kind of a little bit of everything. One thing that is kind of consistent and all kind of never changes, almost every site will have a unicorn bit of content. So that's what we're going to be kind of chatting through today. So what is a content unicorn? Unicorn content refers to special pieces of content that always outperform other content on the site. So it might not always be the best piece you've ever written. It might be something that you're really, really proud of, but it might not be the most relevant piece to your site. It might be kind of grabbing a little bit too much of your site's organic traffic for your liking, but it's there. Every time monthly reporting comes around, it's top in terms of results. It might be that it's kind of getting traffic or organic sessions. It might be that it's the best performing piece of content in terms of the amount of time that people spend on the page. It might be actually that it creates really strong conversion, has a lovely conversion rate, which would be the dream, wouldn't it? It just depends on kind of how you measure your own site's bit of content, but it should always be something that aims to meet those KPIs. So if a piece of content outperforms the rest on even one of those metrics, you should really start to kind of take the time to nurture it. So unicorn businesses and unicorn marketers are kind of completely different things, and that's probably a conversation for a bit of a different day. But unicorn content is a concept that was first introduced by Larry Kim back in 2018. It just refers to pieces of content that magically seem to outperform all the other bits on your site. It's really worth having a research of Larry Kim if you've got time, and looking at his keynote speeches and webinars on the Content Marketing Moneyball. He's a really insightful guy, and this has kind of sparked a lot of inspiration for content marketers over the years. So it is well worth researching him. So just make him dance again. So what makes great unicorn content? That's what we're going to be kind of talking about today. What makes a good bit of unicorn content, how you can monitor it, how you can grow it, how you can kind of flex the content to make it work harder for you and your brand. It's all about kind of keeping that really special piece of content and making it even better. So a piece of unicorn content, it's normally really, really relevant. So there's an endless stream of content on the internet. Pieces get published all the time, every day, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands. But unicorn content often picks out a really unique niche. So it's either taking a piece of content that no one really has ever written about before, but that people do want to know about, or it's a piece that loads of people have talked about, but you're kind of saying it in a bit of a new and unique way. So you're finding a new way to tell an old story that competitors have spoken about before, but you've said it better. And then sometimes, much as we don't like to admit it, sometimes it is luck. It's just the right time, the right place to publish that specific bit of content. So for example, many years ago, we did a piece on Easter marketing campaigns, and we just happened to publish it at the right time around springtime, that no other competitors had published it. And it just did really well. It kind of hit the top of the SERPs and kind of continued to drive really good organic traffic. So it's one of those things where it can be an annual or seasonal roundup that just happens to be published at the right time of year to kind of get one jump ahead, but it's still at a relevant time of year. And it just so happens to be that both Google and readers just love it. So welcome to Flaunt's unicorn content. So a bit of an inside secret. This is a piece of content for Flaunt Digital that works amazingly every month. Every month, month on month, this piece is kind of driving thousands of organic sessions to the site. So kind of why is that? It's really creative. It's such a lovely idea that's executed really well, combining big ideas with such a lovely tone of voice. It's searched for as well. As a search agency, it's really important that we're kind of keeping on top of the latest trends. And you wouldn't necessarily think that the evolution of mobile phones would be a term that people are super searching for a lot. But it has actually 480 people searching for that specific term every month, with a further 720 people every month searching for the history of mobile phones. So it is a search for term, and that's obviously why it does so well. So there is a strategic decision behind that piece of content. It's long form. Whilst I'm sure a very short, snappy piece would work really well, it probably wouldn't be hitting top of the SERPs. It probably wouldn't be getting that level of organic traffic every month. it's definitive. That kind of comes hand in hand with long form. So it's really rich, detailed information. You can't find that wealth of information anywhere else, which then goes on to making it competitive. It's something that competitors haven't really smashed as well as we have. Just take a look at what else is out there on the topic. It's not as good as this piece. I didn't write this one, so it's not kind of arrogant for me to say it. It is a really lovely piece, and our technical SEO lead's just done the most amazing job of creating a piece that people love. It looks good. I think that's something that, again, content writers are so precious over words, as am I. My design skills are something very lacking, but work with designers, work with developers, make a piece that you're really proud of look good. You don't kind of have to have all of the answers, but seek them out. Try and find a way to make a piece of content interactive and interesting. And then finally, it just works. It's just a really good piece. It reads well, it's in a good tone of voice. People like to read it. It kind of doesn't overwhelm you with information that's unnecessary. It's just the right length in short, snappy informational snippets. So a bit of homework. If you take a look at your own site's analytics, there will be no doubt 1 or 2 blogs that just always receive higher traffic compared to the rest of them. That's your unicorn content. That's the piece that you need to kind of be focusing on, looking at, analysing. It'll serve you really well to kind of know what your unicorn is on your site. So now let's go on to breeding unicorns and how you can make the most of that content. It's worth mentioning as a bit of a caveat, you're probably going to have to create a lot of content before you find a unicorn or 2. It is really well worth it. You might write hundreds and hundreds of pieces and just find that 1 or 2 of them just outperform the rest in magnitude, which kind of makes you feel a little bit like, well, what was the point in writing 100 if only 2 of them are going to perform? Can I not just write the 1 or 2 and discard the rest? No. You can try and find what's made those pieces really successful and emulate that and kind of keep building on that. But realistically, you are going to have to write a swathe of content to find pieces that just happen to catch that imagination with a bit of strategy behind it. But once you find that unicorn, you'll be able to see a greater sense of what works for you and your website, which is a good place to start. So how do you create top performing content? What are the kind of top tips to get you there and to try and make a piece of unicorn content work? Do your research, but not too much. So not to a point where it stifles your creativity. We always know that when you do a bit of keyword research, you can always just aim for the ones that have the highest search volume and hope for the best, but they're going to be super competitive. They're going to, unless your brand is the absolute highest authority in that field, it's unlikely that you can just fly straight to position 1 for a really top performing high search volume term. Try and think a little bit nicher than that. Look at what's really specific to your brand. Look at what will help your brand to grow. It could be really specific and that just happens to capture your audience's imagination. And then going on to kind of exploring the big wide world to find those topics. So what are your competitors talking about? What content do your social media audience love? If you regularly post out social media content, you'll know whether people want to know more about your team or want to know more about kind of hints and tips. You'll know kind of what content generally tends to get social media engagement. And that's probably the content that will work really well on your site as well. Have a look at what bloggers and influencers are talking about as well. They've got huge amounts of following. And if they're talking about a certain topic, like, for example, kind of seersucker bedding, or Mrs. Hinch was talking about that the other month, and it's those kind of picking up on cultural trends and seeing if you can kind of stay 1 step ahead by doing a bit of further research and putting an authoritative piece on your website. And why not try forums like Reddit and try and find little quirky niches in the corner of the internet to kind of see what people are talking about? It works really well and gives you a nice kind of jumping point for creating unique content. Be brave. I think that's my top advice for creating unicorn content and creating content that is likely to outperform the rest. We all love a bit of keyword research. We all love to think that every strategy we create is watertight, and it normally is, but there's nothing wrong at all with having 1 or 2 pieces a month that are a little bit rogue and a little bit different and a little bit more creative and outside of the box, and don't necessarily always hit those kind of massively strategic outcomes. It's one of those things where when you look about mobile phone history, would you necessarily think of that as kind of a strategic piece for a digital agency? Probably not, but it works really well. It converts for us, it works for us. And it would have never happened without the kind of creative genius of the team and without Daniel kind of going a little bit braver with the content that we produce. And look at improving your content relevancy as well. So you can obviously put any amount of content on your website, but if it's not written the best it can possibly be, it's unlikely to be a top performing piece. So as me and Polly were talking about at the kind of very beginning of this webinar, we have a tool in-house called Goose that uses Google's NLP tools to help us know how Google's interpreting our content. Try and find tools like that, try and look at the internet and look at your competitors, see kind of what content is performing well and improve that relevancy, make it something that's full of keywords but not keyword stuffed. It's kind of all of those content writing tips, and any content writer in this webinar will be familiar with that, but just kind of pay really close attention to it. Following on from that, just make it good, make it error-free, make it easy to read. If you're a super technical company, don't overload people with jargon. Find really new and interesting ways to tell that story, maybe an infographic, maybe kind of like you've seen in the mobile phone piece, really short, snappy pieces. It can be long form, but still presented in a way that's easily digestible and that flows and makes you feel kind of immersed in a piece of content. That ties in with being a bit different as well. If you found a really good piece that you think will work well that competitors aren't talking about, fabulous. But sometimes you might see a piece that actually competitors are talking about quite a lot that is quite a saturated market. Just try and find a way bluntly to make sure your piece is better than theirs. If they've not used videos, if they've not used long form, short form, if they've not used images, find ways to kind of beat your competitors and do a piece that's better to try and kind of reach that top performing realm. And then amplify your content. It's one of those things where you will require that cross-department kind of nice way to interact with other people around you. We work really closely with various different teams to amplify our content that we write for clients, and it really does work. Try and get that content in newsletters, on social media, shared, internally linked. Just try and make that content as amplified as you possibly can. If people aren't finding that content straight away, it's quite hard for Google to know whether or not it's important to your audience. If you can show that actually it is interesting, people do want to know what this content's about, people are reading it, sharing it, talking about it, it will help to kind of create that top performing piece of content. And then finally, unicorns weren't created in a day. Just be patient, take your time with it, wait a little bit longer. It's not like you're going to publish a piece of content and 2 weeks later it's going to be top of the SERPs and just outperforming everything that you've ever built on your site. It will take around 6 to 12 months for content to really bed in and see kind of how the land lies, sees how it settles in. If, depending on kind of how the results are, leave the piece as it is, accept it's not going to be a soaring success if it doesn't magically kind of become a unicorn piece. See whether or not it has particular value to your site, and if it does and you really think that it can work a little bit harder, make some changes, see if there's other ways that you can amplify it. And then at the absolute worst case scenario, if your piece doesn't become a piece of unicorn content, just learn from it, learn from what you've maybe done that you wouldn't do again. There's always ways to kind of make sure that you're doing your best with the content and with your ideas. And then obviously if it does become a top performing piece of content and you've found a unicorn, keep using the same techniques, keep trying, keep ideating, and keep having those brainstorms with your team to try and get a bit creative. So once your content enters the mythical realm, there's no going back. You're stuck with it, whether you like it or not. I've worked for many brands over the years, and there's always been a piece of unicorn content, and whether or not you want it, you're having it. It's there, it's top of your search results, top of your organic sessions, it's always in your monthly reports. You may as well love it because it's not going anywhere. You can't, unless you just decide to delete it, which would be ludicrous because you've got a piece that does really well. You have to nurture that piece of content. I've never seen a piece of content do really, really well and then suddenly not, unless there's been a massive change or a cultural shift. So for example, that mobile phone blog drives around 1,000 people to the site every month. And it does work really well for us, but it could be kind of working harder, and that's kind of what we're going to be going on to chat about. So great news. If your unicorn's relevant, fantastic. If it really hits the brand messaging that you're wanting to put out, if you think your audience will be interested in it, if it's a piece of content that is absolutely perfect in every way, in your opinion and your team's opinion, you need to nurture that piece of content and make sure that it's working in the way that you want it to. So keep an eye on the content each month, tracking areas of success, optimize it, tweak your intro, add links, make it a little bit better if it needs optimizing further, just to kind of help keep on track and keep kind of maintaining it. Any content writer on this webinar will know that content needs to be kind of continually looked after and maintained to continue maintaining performance. So never just leave it and hope for the best. Sites are living, breathing things, and new things happen to brands, and there are new internal links, there are new blogs that are published all the time. So piece of content can't just stay stagnant. You can intertwine it and integrate it with the rest of your website as well. Train your piece of content, tweak your content to drive the results that you need. If, for example, a piece does really well in terms of sessions, but conversion rate's really low, is that working as hard as it can for your site? If you actually put in CTAs, more photographs, more internal links, would that actually help overall site performance rather than just kind of leaving a piece of content to drive traffic and then just letting that free on its own? You can kind of steer users to various different places of your website using internal linking, and I would recommend that if you're trying to drive CTAs. Similarly, if a piece of traffic's got really high conversion rate but low organic traffic, is there a way that you can work with a social team to try and amplify it, to try and build a bit of shareability with the piece? So train your unicorn content to work for the way that your brand needs it to. Amplify it. I know I kind of keep mentioning that, but keep changing, keep sharing. If you've made a tweak to your content, send it out again. Anything that you do to give a little tweak to it, if you change the title, change the H1, send it back out, keep regularly pushing that piece of unicorn out to make it work harder for you. And finally, learn from it. Analyze what makes that piece so special in your opinion. So it could be that it is just telling a new story, so there's something no one's ever spoken about, or it's something that loads of competitors talk about that you've managed to make better. If that's what works for your site and your audience, try that magic formula again and see if you can kind of keep making that content work for you and that strategy work for you. This one's a little bit trickier, and everyone on here will know that piece of content that we all have that's maybe not so relevant to your website. It might be that it was at the time, but maybe it's not now. Maybe your brand's going in a different direction. You've got a piece of content that does really, really well and that's driving loads of traffic to your site, but it's perhaps not driving the audience that you want to your website. So analyze it, appreciate a piece of content that's working for you. Like, never be ungrateful for that piece of content ever. It is a magical thing, but try and find out when it was and why it was created. If somebody's got a specific strategy behind it, you need to know that. If it is that it was beautifully on brand 5-10 years ago, and now the brand's gone in a different direction, you need to be working to bring that content back to where your brand is now. Never kill a unicorn. Never. That is never something you should do. There is a tendency for content writers to want to just kind of remove things if it's not relevant, or for a brand manager to go, it's not on brand, get rid. Don't do this if it's performing well. There are so many things you can do to nurture that piece of content and to change it up a little bit, even if you have to do a fairly chunky rewrite, but keep the very kind of bare bones of the structure there to kind of mix things up a little bit. I wouldn't massively recommend doing something that might kind of impact performance, but never just remove it. It's still super beneficial to your site, even if you do nothing with it and it doesn't necessarily drive conversions. A high performance driver on your site is fantastic from an internal linking point and from your site's overall authority as well. So nurture it, bring your unicorn content back on brand. We've kind of already talked about this a little bit, but 9 times out of 10, a piece of unicorn content will be loosely, if not entirely, related to your brand and its purpose. So you can probably try and bring it back on brand and kind of add a few more internal links in. Coming on to internal links again, just grow that content. Try and find category pages, other blog content that you can kind of link to either from the piece of unicorn content or link to your unicorn content from key category pages. Try and build that authority. You've got a piece that does really, really well. And if you can show Google that other pages are linked to it and attribute authority from that really high performance page, that's a fantastic way for you to just build your overall site's authority. Then finally, test it. We're a big fan of testing here at Flaunt, and I think it's something that content writers don't do probably as much as they ought to. If you're making big, bold changes like a full rewrite or like internal linking, or if you're doing something big, just test it before you just publish it and potentially damage that results. You can use Google Optimize. There's other ways that you can test that content to make sure that it is actually going to continue to drive average time on page, bounce rate, sessions. There's ways for you to test that it's not actually going to damage your content before you just kind of take a guess and hope for the best. I'd never recommend that you do that. And then finally, take your unicorn for a ride. If you've got a piece of unicorn content, give yourself a massive pat on the back, celebrate with your team. It's an amazing thing to have a piece of content that drives traffic to your website, and just repurpose it and share its magic far and wide. So create a sequel. If, for example, if you do a piece that's a roundup of the last year and that worked really well, do another one for the year ahead and then make sure that the two are linked to see if you can pick up that kind of similarities between the two pieces. If you've got a massive long form piece that does really well, try turning it into a blog series, try splitting it up, try kind of seeing if you can make little unicorn babies for your content. If you've got a short form piece that does really well, is there an opportunity to develop it into a long form piece? Maybe pop that long form piece into a bit of gated content on your site so that then you can get people's details and drive data insight that way. Can you transform your piece into a different format, an infographic, downloadable PDF, even a comic book? Could you take it from a digital piece of content and make it offline? Could that be a way to kind of just grow that content and make the most of it? Obviously, have links to relevant category pages. If you've got a piece of long form content, make sure that that's linking out to pages that you want to drive traffic to. Mention it in newsletters, create a webinar about it, share the good news, share it on social media, lots. People love a bit of shareable content. And obviously, if that piece of content's driving traffic to your site, it's likely that audiences want to know about it. And it's a piece of content that's really insightful to your audience. So don't just stick it in a gate just for content and be kind of content goblins about it. Do share it with your social team, share it with your brand managers, let people kind of celebrate the content that you've written. It is one team, one dream. And I know that does sound cliche, but just as content writers, we aren't just designed to write content that performs and keep it to ourselves. It's kind of a very big skill to associate yourself with other teams and to kind of help amplify that content and to work as a group to make sure that content does reach your audience. Same with amplifying it with paid ads. If you've got a PPC team or a paid manager, speak to them about it. See if there's a way that they can drive paid traffic to that piece of content. If you know it's useful and you know that it's something that your audience wants to hear about, why would you not try and get that in front of as many eyes as you possibly can? So do make that unicorn content work harder across all of your departments, not just content. I think that's everything. I think we kind of whipped through that relatively quickly, I hope. There's lots of, I could talk about this for literally hours, but for now.
No, that was fab. So Sophie, we've got a few questions. So we've got about 5 minutes till the end, which is perfect because we've got quite a few questions in the chat. So I think we should just about be able to get through them all. So first one is, what if analytics doesn't clearly show a piece of content that stands out above the rest? Is it just a case of writing more until that becomes clearer?
Yeah, you will find that it will emerge. I've worked for a client, for example, for a couple of years now, and it's only just been in the last kind of 6 months or so that one piece has really kind of started to do quite well and started to take over. And that's a piece that's only been written in the last 12 months or so. So you will find that piece of unicorn content. If you've not tried these techniques before, that's a really good way to test that out and see if you can find it. But yeah, it will come up. It will make itself known. I promise.
It'll be there. So we've got another one here in the chat. So what is your tip for motivation or a solution when you've written piece after piece and you don't feel like you're getting anywhere?
Yeah, it's something that no content writer wants to feel, that your content's not performing as it should do. But I think we all don't want to go back and edit our content. I certainly don't. I find editing very hard. I've written a piece and I kind of want it to just magically do really well. But there is a skill in itself in editing and in doing that competitor research and seeing why your piece isn't perhaps the best it could be. And it is a hard lesson to learn. And it does take a lot of heart and a lot of humility to kind of accept that it does need an edit. So yeah, I would 100% just keep plugging away, editing, look at your competitors and what they're doing and see if you can do better than them. I'm sure you can. I'm sure everyone here is an incredible content writer, and it's just finding that confidence to kind of keep tweaking and keep making those changes.
Awesome. So what should a content audit look like and involve? That's a big question.
That's a different webinar. A content audit should include pull off all of your data and separate it. So how's your site content performing? How's your blog content performing? If you've got a guide section, how's your guide section performing? Split it into kind of different format types. Look at every metric that you have available to you, whether that be sessions, conversions. Look at it from the last 12 months compared to the 12 months before. See kind of how it's improved over the year. And then plug it into AccuRanker. If you've got AccuRanker tools, make sure that you're knowing kind of what ranking increases have happened over that last 12 months. And then you'll be able to start to see what's increasing and what perhaps needs a bit of a rework if you're seeing blog pieces that are kind of declining in performance year on year.
Awesome. What if a piece of content isn't performing well? Should we remove it or leave it be?
it depends how badly it's performing, I think is kind of the best way around it. If it's doing all right and it is getting a few sessions and you think that it's a piece that deserves to be on the site and it's really highly relevant to your audience, that's the clear thing. If it is relevant and it's something that you believe your audience needs to know or should know, it should always stay on your site, however it performs. If it's a good bit of content, keep it there. If it's something that maybe is never performing, it's getting 1 or 2 sessions a year and it's just kind of dying slowly and it's not related to your brand anymore, there is a way for you to kind of redirect it to a piece that perhaps is a little bit more relevant, but that's an absolute last resort. Where possible, everything should be kind of kept on your site if it is relevant. You should kind of only be writing pieces that are relevant anyway.
So just a couple more. So what is the balance for unicorn content in terms of length? Does it always have to be long form?
No. I've seen somewhere when you do competitor research, you kind of often come across 1 or 2 pieces at the top of the SERPs that you haven't written, that are like a couple of paragraphs long from kind of 2008, back in the day when they just happened to just get a jump on a piece of content and it just does really well and it's top of the search and it'll drive loads of traffic to their site, no doubt. So no, it doesn't have to be. I personally think that's poor content and I think they should probably kind of look to be a bit more informative to their users. But yeah, no, I think as long as it's doing well and your audience finds it valuable, it doesn't always have to be War and Peace. If it's a short and sweet bit of information, then keep it short and sweet.
Awesome. There's one last one which I'll just ask quickly. If you have several which get similar levels of engagement, should you focus on one or all of them?
I would focus on all of them. Why not? Like, put a plan together. Don't do it all at once. If you add it into your content strategy and look at doing 1 piece kind of every month, then you can, at a halfway point, you can look at whether that's worked. Maybe try a few different techniques on 1 or 2 pieces, a bit of a test, and then you can roll it out on the other pieces as well and see if you can lift them all over time.
Perfect. So yeah, that is the end for us. So thank you very much to everybody for joining. We'll be sending over the deck for you so you can look through it at your own leisure and share that and use some of the tips and things in there. We are now doing monthly webinars as well, so please have a look on Eventbrite and see if there's any others that we've got coming up that might interest you. So we're sort of focused on everything from content marketing to paid social, to PR and things as well. So yeah, do check out our other stuff. And like I said, we'll send up a follow-up of this webinar as well, and you'll be able to rewatch it online if you do want to go back and see it again. But thank you to everybody for joining.
Thank you.